The sky over Willow Ridge was cloudless that morning. A blue canvas stretched above trimmed hedges and two-story homes that all looked alike on purpose. This was a place where conformity wasn't just encouraged. It was enforced, and no one enforced it harder than Karen Mallory. Every Saturday, Karen made her rounds, latte in one hand, clipboard in the other. She marched like a one-woman patrol. She'd issue citations for holiday lights being up a day late, for garden gnomes leaning slightly left, for kids chalking the sidewalks like it was some kind of free-for-all. Karen didn't just lead the whole board, she was the board. Zane Mitchell had dealt with her before, but up until now, it had only been warnings. Grass 2 inches tall, trash bins visible from the street. Harmless stuff. He'd brushed it off. But what happened on that Saturday morning wasn't harmless. Zane's single quotes as 9-year-old nephew, Eli, was visiting for the long weekend. His parents were out of state, and the kid had been counting down to fireworks and barbecue since Tuesday. That morning, Zane handed him a bundle of pinwheels and told him to plant them along the sidewalk. Eli was careful, excited to help. Karen's voice cracked the air like a whip. "That's a violation of Section 14, Line B," she announced, walking straight up to the boy. "Those are HOA-approved fixtures." Zane stepped out from the garage, dusting sawdust off his hands. "They're just pinwheels, Karen. It's Independence Day weekend." She didn't stop walking, her coffee sloshed in the cup as she waved the clipboard in one hand. "If I make an exception for you, I have to make an exception for everyone. Rules are rules." Karen's foot caught the edge of the curb. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was karma. Either way, she lost her balance. Her coffee flew from her hand. The lid popped off midair. Zin saw it happen in slow motion. The liquid hit Eli square on the arm. The scream that followed was sharp enough to stop the birds. The boy dropped the pinwheels, clutching his arm as hot liquid soaked through his t-shirt. Zane ran. He yanked the cooler lid open and dumped a bottle of cold water on the boy's arm, pulling him away from the sidewalk. Karen took a step back, brushing dirt off her capri. He shouldn't have been standing there. Zane looked up. He couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "You poured boiling coffee on a child, and that's your response." Karen's voice was steady. "It was an accident. If your property wasn't cluttered with non-approved decorations, none of this would have happened." Eli whimpered. The skin on his arm was turning blotchy, pink, and angry. Zane wrapped a towel around it and helped him into the truck without another word. They drove straight to urgent care. At the clinic, the nurse asked if Zane wanted to file a police report. He hesitated. Filing charges might take months, maybe longer. But something inside him had already shifted. Not just anger, but resolve. This wasn't just a neighbor who needed to be taught a lesson. This was a bully with a rule book who had never once been held accountable. He stared at the waiting room ceiling and thought of every time Karen had knocked on someone's door with that clipboard. Every time she fined retirees for paint colors or single moms for swing sets. He wasn't going to yell. He wasn't going to fight back in the horror meeting where she thrived. He was going to do something smarter. As Eli sat beside him, quietly sipping apple juice with gauze around his arm, Zane picked up his phone. Not to call the HOA, not even the police. He had a better contact, a quiet one, a real estate lawyer he'd remodeled kitchens for 2 summers ago. Someone who knew how to check public records. The first domino had fallen. Karen just didn't know it yet. She walked away thinking it was over, that a shrug and a smirk were enough. But the moment that coffee hit the ground, so did her grip on control. Because what Zane found next didn't just change the game, it flipped the whole board. By Sunday morning, the pinwheels were gone. So was the laughter from the Mitchell home. Eli sat inside, arm bandaged and stiff. The excitement of the long weekend replaced with silence. Zane didn't sleep much that night. The incident kept playing in his head, not just the spill, but Karen's words, her tone, the way she turned the blame toward a child. It was more than arrogance. It was practiced cruelty. He wasn't the only one who'd felt it. By noon, Zayn had spoken to 3 neighbors, quiet ones who usually avoided confrontation. One had been fined for a privacy fence that was built 2 inches too high. Another was forced to repaint their shutters after Karen declared the original color too whimsical. The third, an elderly veteran, fined for having a U.S. flag mounted at a non-compliant angle. Each of them had paid the fines. Each of them had been humiliated at HOA meetings. And not one had pushed back. Zayn wasn't surprised. Karen made it hard to fight back. Her husband was a retired cop. Her brother-in-law was the county code officer. And her cousin, he ran the management company that advised the HOA. She wrapped herself in red tape like armor, and she knew most people wouldn't untangle it just to hang a flag or keep a bench on their lawn. But Zayn had something she hadn't counted on: resolve and connections. He called Matt Salinas, the real estate attorney who still owed him for a kitchen remodel Zayn had done under budget. Matt was quick. Zayn didn't even have to ask twice. By Monday morning, Matt sent over the documents. The Mitchell property, according to the original plat maps from 15 years ago, included a 5-foot strip of land that had been mysteriously absorbed into common HOA green space. The HOA had extended fencing, moved signs, and even placed Karen's fancy flower bed right on it illegally. Zayn stared at the file for a long moment. It felt too perfect. But it wasn't. It was real. Karen had literally taken land that wasn't hers. Zayn turned it into a badge of authority. That wasn't all. Matt had also found invoices from the HOA funds marked landscape maintenance. The total, $3,800 a year, paid to a company registered under the name D&M Property Care. The owner, Doug Mallory, Karen's husband. Zayn didn't call Matt back right away. He went outside instead. Eli was on the porch. In a sling, he looked up from his tablet. Is Karen going to get in trouble? Zayn knelt beside him. Maybe, but not the kind of trouble she's used to handing out. Zayn spent the next few hours walking the neighborhood, not with a clipboard, but with printed documents. He handed out copies to anyone who opened their door, especially those who had once been fined, warned, or humiliated. He didn't give speeches. He just showed them the facts. By evening, word had spread. Karen noticed. At 7:13 p.m., her SUV slowed in front of Zayn's house. She didn't stop, just stared from behind tinted glass and kept driving. Her version of a warning. Zayn smiled from the porch and waved. The next morning, the citations began. 3 neighbors, each of whom had spoken with Zayn, received violations. 1 for unapproved porch furniture, 1 for excessive front yard signage after a support Zayn sticker was placed in their window, and 1 for having a vehicle tire touch the curb. Karen was sending a message, but so was Zayn, because tucked inside each HOA mailbox that week was a flyer, simple, black and white. On one side, a diagram of the property line proving the HOA's flower bed sat on Zayn's lot. On the other, a list of conflict of interest payments to D&M Property Care. He didn't sign it. He didn't have to. The neighbors had already chosen a side. She burned a child and called it an accident. She violated property lines and called it enforcement. But when the same rules turned toward her, Karen learned something new. Paper cuts the deepest when it's from your own rulebook. By Thursday, Willow Ridge wasn't just whispering about Karen, they were planning around her. Neighbors who had once feared her clipboard were now texting each other in secret group chats. One resident, retired teacher Margot Ellison, who'd lived in the neighborhood for 20 years without ever challenging the HOA, showed up at Zayn's door with banana bread and a USB stick. A held audio. A full 38 minutes from the last closed-door HOA board meeting. Margot had been on the architectural review committee and had left her phone recording by accident, or so she said with a wink. Zayn listened that night. Karen's voice echoed through tinny speakers. She mocked families by name. She laughed about over-regulating the riffraff. She admitted to using leftover HOA funds to hire her own husband's company because, in her words, why not keep it in the family? It was more than enough. The next HOA board meeting was only 2 days away. Karen, still unaware of what was about to hit her, prepared for it like any other performance. She ironed her blazer, printed fresh violation letters, and ensured the venue, small church hall, was stocked with bottled water and nothing else. She hated when people brought snacks, too informal. But that Saturday, the chairs were full, not just the regular handful of attendees. Nearly every homeowner showed up, couples with strollers, grandparents with canes, teenagers with earbuds who'd never cared about bylaws before. Karen stepped to the microphone. Stiff posture, hair pulled back tight. Her voice began the same as always. Thank you for attending. Let's keep it orderly, concise, and in line with procedural expectations. Zane raised his hand before she even finished. She tried to ignore it. First item, she continued, is a review of point of inquiry, Zane said, louder. I'd like the board to hear a grievance regarding abuse of HOA power, misallocation of funds, and conflict of interest. I have evidence. Karen's hand froze mid-page. You're out of order, she said. The bylaws say any homeowner can request the floor at the start of a meeting if 5% of attendees support it, Zane replied. We've got over 60% here tonight. Want me to count the hands? Karen glanced around. No one was looking at her. All eyes were on Zane. Her lips tightened. 1 minute. Then we move on. Zane stepped forward. He didn't bring papers, just a flash drive. I've submitted this audio file to the HOAS management company already, he said. It contains 38 minutes of last month's closed-door board session in it. Mrs. Mallory confirms funneling contracts to her husband's company, joking about fining residents without cause, and speaking in clear violation of fiduciary duty. There was silence, then murmurs, then someone shouted from the back, play it. Karen lunged for the mic. This is not admissible. This meeting is being hijacked. A man in a denim jacket stood near the door. Zane recognized him. Tom Reyes, a county mediator who had been brought in once before when a former HOA president tried to rezone a neighborhood dog park into a private tennis court. Reyes held up a badge. The management company requested my presence tonight, he said. They've also asked for an emergency vote. If the allegations are supported by documentation, the board can be dissolved pending audit. That includes the president. Karen went pale. I demand legal counsel, she said. You're not under arrest. Ma'am, Reyes replied. You're just outnumbered. The flash drive clicked into the laptop. The speakers came alive. Karen's voice filled the room, laughing at names, laughing at children, gloating about power. People didn't just listen, they recorded. Phones were everywhere. For the first time since Karen had taken power, her smile cracked out. And then, unexpectedly, her husband burst into the room. Doug Mallory, red-faced, sweating, came charging up the aisle. This is slander, he yelled. My wife has done more for this community than anyone here. Zane turned. Doug, do you deny D&M Property Care received over $15,000 in HOA funds last year alone for services never itemized? Doug didn't answer. He just pulled Karen by the arm. And they left. No one stopped them. They built the HOA like a fortress, never thinking the people inside would turn against the ones at the top. But Karen forgot one thing about fire once. It spreads. You can't control where it burns. The board didn't just hear the truth. They felt it. But Karen, she wasn't done. Because even cornered animals find ways to lash out. And Zane's next move will take this war out of the meetings and into the legal ring. Keep watching. The rules are about to get rewritten. 3 days passed after the HOA meeting. Karen's car didn't leave the driveway once. Her porch light stayed off. The neighborhood watched, half expecting her to resign, or move, or lash out. But instead she went quiet to quiet. Zane didn't trust the silence. Not after what he'd seen from her. Karen didn't back down. She regrouped. She schemed. And when she showed up again, she didn't come with rage. She came with charm. It started on Thursday, a bright morning, birdsong in the air, and Karen walking door to door not with citations, but with cookies. Literal cookies, neatly wrapped, tied with red ribbons, and labeled, let's start fresh, from Karen, people were baffled. One neighbor, Joel, stood on his lawn holding the cookie box like it was a live grenade. Zane spotted her walking his way around mid-morning, clipboard gone, no sunglasses, no power suit, just a cardigan and a forced smile. She stopped a few feet from his porch. "Zane," she said, her voice sweet. "I want to extend an olive branch. Things have clearly gotten off track. I'd like to talk about how we move forward for the sake of the neighborhood." Zane didn't speak. He just looked at the burn mark on Ellie's pinwheel, still resting by the garage wall. She followed his gaze, but didn't acknowledge it. "I understand tensions were high," she added. "But there's no reason we can't resolve this civilly." "Right." Zane raised an eyebrow. "Civilly? Before or after the misuse of HOA funds and the coffee burn you never apologized for?" Karen's smile thinned. "But held, those are misunderstandings. The board is still investigating. But you've made your point loud and clear." He folded his arms. "The board voted to suspend you pending audit. You're not even allowed to initiate HOA business." She gently set the cookie tin on the porch. "Step, I'm just here as a neighbor. No titles, no drama." She walked away without another word. But something didn't feel right. That night, Singh received an email from the management company. It said the board audit had been paused due to a new motion filed by Karen's attorney citing harassment and illegal recordings. She was using the audio clip from Margaret's USB drive against the board itself, claiming it was manipulated and unlawfully obtained. The delay wasn't permanent, but it gave her time. By morning, half the neighbors who had supported Zane were rattled. One received a letter from a private firm threatening a defamation lawsuit for spreading malicious gossip. Another found an anonymous complaint filed with the city about an unregistered shed. Even though their permits were clear, Karen was coming back, but not with rules. With fear, Zane met with Matt, his lawyer friend, that same afternoon. They sat in a quiet coffee shop, away from neighborhood eyes. "She's stalling," Matt said, flipping through printouts. "She knows the audit will end her run. She's trying to muddy the process with counterclaims. If she can make it messy enough, she buys time, maybe even resets the board under a technicality." "She burned my nephew," Zane said, keeping his voice low. "And she's still playing the victim." Matt nodded. "You want to make this stick? Then we hit her from the side where she's not looking. Civil court, private suit, Ellie's injury, the property encroachment, and the HOA misuse, all together. Will it stop her? If we do it fast and public, it might." Zane looked out the coffee shop window. Across the street was a small office with a wooden sign and a kids' play area inside. He made his decision. That night, Karen's doorbell rang. When she opened it, she found a process server holding a thick envelope. She tried to close the door. He placed the envelope on the mat. "You've been served." Inside were 3 civil complaints. One from Zane, one from Ellie's parents, one surprisingly from Margot Ellison herself. Karen didn't smile anymore. She tried charm. She tried fear. But she forgot what happens when people stand together. Now, the woman who built her kingdom on control is being dragged into the one place she can't talk her way out of her courtroom. Court papers shook up Willow Ridge like a thunderclap. Some neighbors still stayed quiet, afraid of backlash. But most were done hiding. They were tired of tiptoeing around landscaping violations, of HOA fees mysteriously rising, of watching Karen wield power like a sword. What they didn't know was that Karen wasn't just fighting a legal battle now. She was unraveling. At night, her blinds stayed shut, but her lights flicked from room to room like someone pacing nonstop. Delivery vans came and went, legal documents, folders, envelopes. She was preparing for war. But Zane, he was preparing something else. A win. The civil suit had teeth. Ellie's medical records, witness statements, and the HOA financial trail linking Karen to payouts through her husband's company. But even strong cases can fall apart when the other side twists the truth. And Karen was good at that. So Zane needed someone she couldn't twist against him. Someone she'd forgotten. Someone who had once sat at her own side. Matt, the attorney, was the one who found her, Her name's Emily Lauder, Matt said, scrolling through an HOA newsletter archive. Used to be on the board, treasurer for 3 years. Then, she disappeared. No resignation. Just gone. Zane leaned in. Why'd she leave? Matt smirked. That's what I asked, turns out. She filed a complaint with the HOA's management company 2 years ago, said Karen pressured her to alter a budget spreadsheet before submission. The file vanished from official records after Karen reviewed it. Zane's stomach turned. Emily had vanished from the neighborhood soon after. No one really talked about it, but Matt tracked her down 3 towns over, running a small florist shop. Zane made the drive the next morning. The bell above the shop door jingled as he stepped in. The scent of fresh lilies and eucalyptus masked the tension he carried. A woman in her mid-40s looked up from behind the register. Her eyes flicked to Zane's face, studying him. You're from Willow Ridge, she said before he spoke. Zane nodded. I'm sorry to show up like this. I just need 5 minutes. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. They sat in the back office. Among ribbon spools and pots of soil, Zane told her everything. The coffee, Eli, the board meeting, the fake charm, the lawsuit. When he finished, Emily leaned back, arms crossed. She hasn't changed, she said. Back then, it started small. A few missing receipts, landscaping invoices marked up. She said it was just paperwork shuffling. But when I tried to file a report, someone from the management company called me the next day, told me to resign. Before things got ugly, Zane's heart raced. Would you testify? Emily's eyes didn't blink. Yes. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, old notes, everything she had saved before she left. I've been waiting for someone to finally stand up to her, she said. Guess I just didn't know who that would be. That night, Zane scanned every document. The numbers matched what Matt had found. Karen had been cooking her payments for years, and now, someone with nothing left to lose was ready to talk. The next day, Karen received her second surprise, a formal notice that Emily Lauder had agreed to testify in the upcoming hearing, backed by hard records and a sworn affidavit. Karen didn't speak publicly, but her lawyer filed a motion to delay their hearing again. It was denied. Her power was slipping. That afternoon, Zane and Eli sat on the porch. The kid's arm was healing, the bandages thinner now, the skin less angry. You think she's scared now? Eli asked. Zane looked across the street at Karen's dark windows. She should be. The woman who spent years hiding behind bylaws never thought the quietest board member she betrayed would come back. But now Emily's voice, once silenced, is echoing through the courtroom, and it's got receipts. The courthouse smelled like old paper and recycled air. The kind of place where justice moved slower than everyone wanted, but still moved. Zane sat in the back row, ironed, hands clenched together. His nephew Eli wasn't there. Neither were Allie's parents. Today wasn't for them. Today was about truth and one woman finally being forced to speak it out loud. Karen Mallory arrived flanked by 2 attorneys. No clipboard, no sunglasses. Just a beige pantsuit, and that same forced smile she had handed out with cookies weeks earlier. But behind her, the lines on her face were deeper. Her confidence cracked. The judge called the session to order. Preliminary hearing. Civil suit. 3 plaintiffs. 1 defendant. Allegations. Personal injury. Financial misconduct. And breach of fiduciary duty. Karen's attorneys tried to delay again, claiming their witness list wasn't finalized. But the judge wasn't having it. You've had over 30 days, he said. This hearing moves forward. Zane watched her reaction closely. She blinked fast, swallowed hard, but she didn't look at him. The first testimony came from Emily's doctor reading the injury report. 2nd-degree burns. The description of how the child cried when the skin blistered made the courtroom still. The photos were sealed, but the weight of them lingered in the room. Karen's attorney objected, claiming there was no direct evidence that the coffee had been intentionally spilled. The judge didn't flinch. Intent isn't the only thing being judged here. Then came the big moment. Emily Lauder took the stand. She looked different than she had when Zane first met her in the flower shop. More composed, more resolved. And the minute she started speaking, it was clear the courtroom had no idea what was coming. I served on the Willow Ridge HOA board as treasurer from 2019 through 2022, she began. During that time, I witnessed recurring financial discrepancies, all connected to companies tied to Karen Mallory's immediate family. She named D&M Property Care, listed invoice numbers, and submitted spreadsheets she had saved. Then she detailed the day Karen asked her to adjust a balance sheet just before a financial review, how she refused, and how within 48 hours, a resignation letter she never wrote appeared on the community website. The judge leaned forward. "Are you saying you were removed from the board against your will?" "Yes," Emily said, "and I was threatened with legal action if I made a fuss." Karen's attorney fumbled to object again, claiming hearsay. Emily simply pulled out printed emails with Karen's name in the headers. The judge accepted them. Zane could feel it then, the shift in the room, like a rope being pulled from under Karen's feet. When she was finally called to speak, her smile was gone. She rose slowly, eyes scanning the crowd like a cornered animal on the stand. Her voice was calm, too calm, measured, like she was trying to narrate her own version of events before someone else wrote them for her. "I never intended harm to that child. It was an accident," she said. "And as for the HOA funds, every expense was pre-approved through routine votes. There's nothing improper here. This is a coordinated attack from a group of disgruntled residents who don't like rules." Zane didn't flinch, but Karen kept going. "These lawsuits are personal. Mr. Mitchell has turned a neighborhood disagreement into a witch hunt. He's politicized a child's injury. He's bullied neighbors into siding with him. This is harassment." The judge stopped her. "You're not here to lecture the court, Mrs. Mallory." Karen's eyes burned, but not from tears. The mask of professionalism she wore so tightly finally cracked. Just for a second, she muttered something under her breath. Not everyone heard it. Zane did. "They should be thanking me." The judge called a recess. Zane stepped outside into the warm air and leaned against the concrete wall, letting the sunlight hit his face. Emily walked out next to him, quiet for a moment. "You saw it, right?" she asked. He nodded. "She's slipping." Inside, Karen remained in the courtroom with her lawyers. But for the first time since this began, she looked alone. She thought the courtroom was just another HOA meeting, one she could steer with smiles, excuses, and blame. But she forgot something. Out here, the truth gets recorded, and every word she tried to twist just tightened the rope. 2 days after the hearing, just as the tension in Willow Ridge seemed to hit its peak, Zane received a knock on his door, not from a lawyer or neighbor, but from a FedEx courier. The box was small, plain, no return label. Inside, buried beneath brown packing paper, was a folder. No note, just paperwork, and one name that made his heart stop: Victoria L. Denton, HOA Management Division. Former regional director. Zane recognized the name. She used to oversee dozens of HOA chapters across the county before suddenly retiring. Rumor had it she clashed with Karen years ago over something behind closed doors. Then, she just vanished from public boards. He flipped the pages. The documents were internal memos, unsigned emails forwarded to personal addresses, and whistleblower complaints archived, buried, never followed up. Zane wasn't sure where it came from or why now, until he reached the final document. It was a transcript dated from 4 years ago. A recorded conversation between Victoria Denton and Karen Mallory. It wasn't HOA business. It was a threat. Karen had been under review for conflict of interest. Back then, Victoria had initiated it quietly, but Karen found out, and according to the transcript, Karen offered to leak sensitive details about other board members' finances if the review wasn't through. "Read, I'll take this entire HOA system down with me." Karen's words read, "You want war? Fine. But you'll regret starting it." Zane stared at the paper. This wasn't just a petty tyrant who burned a kid and stole a flower bed. This was a manipulator with years of buried blackmail, threats, and dirt hidden under layers of fake smiles and hoa pamphlets. He called Matt immediately. Matt's voice was sharp. "That's the piece. That's what we've been missing. We get Victoria to testify. Karen's entire history comes out. But she's off the grid," Zane said. "No public address. No business. Nothing." Matt paused. "Leave it with me." The next 24 hours moved fast. Matt called in a favor from a former paralegal who used to work for Denton's old management firm, a coffee shop in upstate New York. That's where she was last spotted, running a bed and breakfast under a different name. Zane didn't waste time. He got on a plane the next day. He found her in a quiet village surrounded by pine trees and silence. Victoria Denton looked older, tired, but her eyes were sharp. She didn't seem surprised when Zane showed up. "I thought it might be you," she said, motioning for him to sit on the porch. "I got your box," he said. "I didn't send it," she replied. "But I knew someone eventually would. That copy wasn't meant to see light. But I kept it. I was scared, Karen. She had power I couldn't fight." Zane took a breath. "You still can." She was quiet for a long time, then nodded. "I'll testify. I'll bring everything." By the time Zane returned home, the next hearing had been scheduled only 5 days away. Karen's team filed her motion to suppress the new witness. They lost. The courtroom buzzed the day Victoria Denton walked in. She wore a gray blazer. Not flashy, not angry, just calm. She took the stand and told the truth. Every board Karen twisted, every payment she authorized, every threat she made when someone tried to stop her. Zane watched Karen across the aisle. She wasn't scribbling notes anymore. She wasn't whispering to her lawyers. Her hands rested in her lap, frozen, because the system she'd built tight, intimidating, wrapped in red tape was cracking from the inside. And now, with the help of someone she thought she buried, her past was spilling out faster than she could cover it. She ruled for years with rules she bent, people she broke, and threats she never thought would catch up. But the thing about secrets is they don't stay buried, especially when the person who knows them has nothing left to lose. Stopped by the time the final hearing approached. Karen Mallory was no longer walking through Willow Ridge with a clipboard. She wasn't walking through it at all. Her SUV hadn't left. The gouache in days, the horror emails she used to send daily, dozens of them, with bolded threats and fine print, had gone silent. The neighborhood that once tiptoed around her was now openly speaking her name, without fear, and, for the first time since the HOAS founding, the residents gathered not for a party, not for a meeting, but for a vote, one that didn't take place in a dim church hall, but in the park Karen once tried to ban barbecues from. Zane stood near the sign-in table, clipboard in hand, not to issue fines, but to tally ballots. Children played behind him, neighbors chatted over fold-out tables, and next to Zane sat Eli, arm healed, pinwheel in hand, spinning softly in the summer breeze. The ballot was simple. Shall Karen Mallory be permanently removed from the horror board and banned from future governance positions within the Willow Ridge Horror, pending legal resolution? Yes or no. One by one, neighbors filed in. Some who had lived there for 20 years. Some who had just moved in months ago and already felt the weight of Karen's legacy. They dropped their ballots into a wooden box Zane had built himself. The very same wood Karen once said didn't match neighborhood color standards. And then, without warning, she arrived. Karen stepped into the crowd with her chin high, wearing sunglasses again. Dressed not for court but for war. Her lawyer walked a step behind her, whispering something Zane couldn't hear. She stopped a few feet from the table and looked around. "These people have no authority," she said aloud. "This vote means nothing. The HOA charter requires a board quorum. This is a circus." Nobody moved. Until Margot Ellison stepped forward. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't shout. She just held up a binder, thick and well-tabbed. "This is the revised HOA charter," she said, "ratified by over 70% of current homeowners, verified by the management company last week. It includes an emergency clause for leadership, removal, Karen's jaw clenched. You rewrote the rules. Margot looked towards Zane. No, we just finally read them for ourselves. Karen turned to the crowd, her voice cracking like brittle glass. I built this neighborhood. I enforced order. I protected your property values. Without me, this place would be a dump. Joel, the neighbor who once hid Karen's cookie package in a bush, stepped forward. He didn't yell either. You didn't protect anything, he said. You punished people. We were scared of you. But that ends today. Karen left, sharp and bitter. You're all going to regret this. Wait until the lawsuits pile up. Wait until the property values drop. You think a burned arm and a few documents mean I'm the villain. She turned towards Zane. This was personal for you, wasn't it? You didn't care about the rules. You just wanted to make me pay. Zane didn't respond with a speech. He just reached into the ballot box and held up the final envelope. The vote's over. He handed it to the notary present neutral, impartial, called in by Matt. The results were read aloud moments later. Out of 162 ballots submitted, 159 said yes. Karen didn't wait for the second number. She turned, shoved past the crowd, and walked straight to her SUV. But when she yanked the door handle, it wouldn't open. It had been booted by the county. A final notice from the city stuck to her window. Pending investigation, improper contractor permits, unauthorized landscaping, civil penalties issued. She stood there for a long moment, completely still. Then she got into the passenger side of her lawyer's car and drove off. No one waved goodbye. Back in the park, the crowd applauded not because someone lost, but because the community finally stood up for itself. Eli tugged at Zane's shirt. Can I plant the pinwheels again? Zane smiled. This time, plant as many as you want. She rolled with fear. She fell by truth. And in the end, the thing she thought made her untouchable, her rules, became the very thing that tore her down.